Did you doubt Peter Costello's ability to win an election?
I thought Peter was a logical successor to me, but I thought a change at that stage was too late. Look, I always said that I thought Peter was my logical successor, but I really don't want to go further in talking about his qualities, and he's got enormous qualities, because that will just get fed into some kind of contemporary observation, and I don't intend that to happen.
But did you think at the time that he lacked political judgment?
I don't really want to add to what I've said about him.
Well, it does seem as though you had a serious reservation about his ability to win an election.
It seems as though I've explained my position at that time, and I'm not going to add to it, David. I may have lost some interviewing skills since I was in active politics, but not that one.
After the election, Peter Costello did signal his interest in seeking a life after politics in the corporate world. Are you surprised he's still there?
Oh, look, once again, I don't want to comment, because that's his decision, that's his future. Everything that I've said in the past about Peter's abilities, I stand by, and I don't regret them, and I don't retract any of them. But as to his future and his intentions, they are matters you should speak to him about, and I'm not going to make comment about them, because those comments, however innocently intended, might be used by people other than you, of course, to suggest certain things.
Well, let me put it to you directly. Who should be leading the Liberal Party, Malcolm Turnbull or Peter Costello?
Malcolm Turnbull. He's been chosen. Peter did not offer himself. I want the Liberal Party to win. I want the Liberal Party back in government as soon as possible, because the Liberal Party always manages the affairs of Australia better than the Labor Party, and Malcolm is the leader. I thought he gave a great reply last night, and he has my goodwill and my full support, as did Brendan Nelson.
But you must know from your time in opposition, your wars with Andrew Peacock, which kept the Liberals in opposition for so many years, that it can't be comfortable for Malcolm Turnbull having a figure like Peter Costello looming on the backbench.
Malcolm's very capable, and I think he demonstrated last night not only a good grasp of economics, but also quite a good political touch. I thought it was a very good presentation. I thought it was well put together, and overall a polished performance. And I think he basically called the Prime Minister's bluff, all this silly nonsense from Mr Rudd about an early election. It's complete nonsense.
Kevin Rudd, to use a phrase made famous by your mate George Bush, did you misunderestimate him?
Oh, Kevin Rudd did well to win, and I accept that. I think the real test for Mr Rudd is how he manages the economic inheritance bequeathed to him by my government, and how he finds a way of explaining to the Australian people what he really believes in.
Comparing him, though, to the several Labor leaders that you've faced in your time, Bob Hawke, Paul Keating, Kim Beazley, Mark Latham, Simon Crean, how does Kevin Rudd compare? Who was the toughest?
Oh, the most talented person I faced in the Labor Party was undoubtedly Hawke.
Why?
Well, he just had more intelligence than any of the others. That's the main reason. And he actually did have a theme to him. He had a set of beliefs. I mean, I didn't agree with a number of them. Some I did. But he did have a set of beliefs. And Keating did to some extent as well. But Kevin Rudd's problem is epitomised in that 7,000-word essay of his. I mean, I read it. It was a bit of a chore, but I read every one of the 7,000.
Where he attacked neoliberalism and extreme capitalism.
It was somebody. If you said to me what I think of it, I'd say it was, well, intellectually flawed, internally inconsistent, and historically inaccurate. And you finish reading it, and you have absolutely no idea of what he stands for. And I think this is the problem he has in relation to the management of the economy in such a difficult period.
Did the Australian people get it wrong in 2007?
Look, I'm a Democrat, small d. I accept that they made a judgment, and I would never criticise the Australian people's judgment. You should never do that in a democracy. I put myself up, and I was disappointed I lost, but I lost, and I've moved on. And we now have a new government. It's been there for 18 months, and and I don't think they're doing a very good job of managing an economic downturn that has come from overseas. I don't think they're making it better. I think they're making it worse with the decisions that they're taking.
All right, so if you had one, what would you have done differently when this economic crisis struck?
Well, to start with, I wouldn't have changed the industrial relations laws to make it dearer to employ people and to push up unemployment. I mean, right at the moment, we're having a rationalisation of awards which is going to make it dearer to employ restaurant and catering staff in many parts of Australia. Now, that is lunacy in the present economic circumstance. That's the first thing. Secondly, I wouldn't have thrown money around and given cheques to people. I'd have actually said to the states, we'll give you, I think it's $16 billion collected throughout Australia for payroll tax. We'll give you payroll tax relief for a year, perhaps even 2, in order to lift the burden of payroll tax. And that would have helped firms to keep staff. I mean, Mr Rudd is right in one respect where he says the main responsibility is to protect jobs. Well, you protect jobs by making it easier for employers to hang on to their staff. His IR laws are making it harder to hang on to your staff or to recruit new staff. And if we had have provided, or they had have provided payroll tax relief, as Troy Buswell has done with his budget in Western Australia, and I give him 10 out of 10 for that, that would have been a pro-employment measure. So I'd have done that. I'd have not done the IR laws. I'd have invested in long-term infrastructure. I wouldn't have sent the $900 cheques. I wouldn't have had this hurried expenditure in relation to schools and the like. Some of it is going to schools who don't want it, some going to schools that do. And I think by splurging all of this money and adding to our debt enormously, Mr Rudd has actually worsened a situation that has been exported to Australia. I mean, it happened overseas and it came to Australia. The big thing he had going for him was that we left him with the strongest budget in the Western world, with, 50-60 billion in a future fund and the lowest unemployment for 30 years. We left him with that inheritance. So he got off to a flying start when it hit, when the tsunami hit, and he's actually made it worse by pushing up the cost of employing people and adding to our debt burden.
But taking up your idea of cutting payroll tax for the states, that would still cost the federal budget a fair whack of money.
But
you nominated $16 billion.
Like, I mean, his last splurge was $43 billion.
What I'm getting at is a deficit, some level of debt, and indeed a recession inevitable.
Well, when you have a big plunge in economic activity, it does affect the revenue. I'm not arguing with that. And it may be that some impact on the surplus and some deficit was unavoidable. I don't deny that. That's not really the issue. The issue is the extent to which you aggravate something over which you have no control. And what I'm saying is that he should have confined his expenditure to those things that would genuinely make it easier to hang on to existing staff for employers and invest in long-term valuable infrastructure. And one of the ironies, David, of this recession is that if you have a secured job and you're paying off a house, you're actually a little better off now than you were a year ago because your mortgage is lower and your petrol is cheaper. So the argument in relation to people in work for an additional stimulus is based entirely on the proposition that they'll spend it and that will generate activity. I think it's far more economically effective to reduce the cost of employing people. That makes it more likely they'll keep their jobs. And it's critical. It's actually quite simple. That if the name of the game is to protect jobs, why do you follow policies that destroy jobs, such as industrial relations policies? Why don't you follow policies that make it easier to preserve jobs, like having a holiday for payroll tax? I mean, that's just an example I've used, but I notice the Western Australian government, to its great credit, is doing that.
You said some level of deficit was unavoidable. What about?
Well, depending. Yep. Look, I don't have the figures available to me anymore, but I accept that when you have a recession, it has an impact on the revenues. Is a recession unavoidable?
Well, we're in a recession.